luggers typically had off-center engines with off-center propeller shafts for a couple of reasons. One is that the centerline assembly is really too narrow to have a center shaft through it safely, and the way that the deadwoods are constructed and all that, you cut through a bunch of keel bolts to do that, and it's really not a good idea. That's how she was when I got her, and it had actually so compromised the stern post that the stern posts had been sistered on both sides, with timbers on both sides, because the hull was like this big and there was just like no stern post left, and it had cut through 3 keel bolts. There was nothing holding the stern knee to the deadwood assembly at all, just tar, which obviously is not good. We don't like that. So there's that, and there's also there's a couple of other reasons. One of them is practically in terms of fishing. They would always work their gear on the starboard side, and that way they never had to worry about fouling on a prop. And also, it's actually a little counterintuitively, it at least going forward, it actually allows you to steer better in forward than if it was on center, because it being offset cancels out the prop walk that you would have. So I'm not very up on how the physics of this works exactly, but when the propeller is turning, it's generating thrust, along its axis, but it's also generating some rotational thrust. Is that the right way of putting it? Angular momentum, I think, something like that. So that will want to kick the stern of the boat in one direction or the other. It being offset in this way sort of cancels it out, which is an added benefit. Josh did a bunch of machining work, mostly on this housing and on the tube that is inside of the log itself. And that all came out great. I'm really happy, thank you. The log, such as it is basically solid blocking that completely fills the space between 2 frames right here. So this gland or fairing piece or whatever you want to call it, through bolts, through the planking, and through all of that blocking on the inside as well. And mitigating vibration, I mean, nothing really other than it's all flexible material. So it's inherently somewhat shock absorbing. And this is something that I made up. If I'd had a slightly larger piece, I would have had it come a little further forward than that. It would have been slightly more hydrodynamic, but that was the piece I had to work with, so there it is. And I did have to do a little bit of adjustment to the feet of the strut. When all the pieces were together, it was off by just a hair. So I had to, basically I stuck packing tape onto the hull to make it not adhere to epoxy, and then put the strut in place with epoxy on the back of the feet, and essentially cast the feet to the hull, and it fits great now, so yeah. And I can do that with 1 finger, which apparently is good, so. We also have, you'll notice there's an exhaust port and a raw water inlet for the engine systems. So that is also new. And probably the biggest new thing is visual, and that is paint. I decided on a hull color, and I'm really happy with it. It's subtle, and it's light, which is good for the hull. I didn't want to paint a dark color because that would compromise the planking over time in this kind of weather. You can get away with that in England, but not so much here. But with black bulwarks and a white rubbing strake, which gives it more of a traditional feel, I think. Yeah, I'm happy. So.
Is there a color convention for fishing boats?
Black with white trim. Yeah. But I didn't want to paint her black, so she would look great black. Just didn't want to deal with, the long-term upkeep of that. Yeah. So, all right. Also new, we'll go down below in a moment and you'll see the rest of this, but deck fills for the fuel tanks and the vents for also for the fuel tanks. The vents aren't quite finished. I need to somehow figure out how to fit these little vents so that they actually go out overboard, which is a 90-degree turn, which I haven't quite figured out how to do yet in a way that I like. But these are good. They have a little mesh in there that's spark arresting, which with diesel isn't strictly necessary, but it's always good. And there's a lot that's new down here. This is mostly where I've been working for the past several months, building out bunks, continuing to build out the galley, building the engine box, starting to build the companionway, cabin sole, all sorts of stuff. So the engine has been probably the biggest focus of all that, which I'll show you. And then these side panels come off as well, so I'll have all around access. I built a little bench over here that is sort of engineering space, so that one can sit while you're tinkering with various parts of that. I got the engine running with all of the systems hooked up, which was really good. So the coolant system, the exhaust system, and the fuel system all worked great. I'm starting to put insulation inside the box as well, which is for heat and sound. And then of course the engine box is itself part of the companionway, as you can see, just because it worked out that way. It kind of had to, otherwise if the engine was here and I needed to put the companionway here, then there wouldn't be any galley. Forward we have a beautiful little wood stove that I found on Facebook Marketplace. It's from Norway, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting it going this winter, hopefully. Yeah, it's got fishermen on it and everything. I've been working on this space a lot as well, which there's a lot going on in this space. This is Fuel tanks, it is showering space, it is the head, and it is the chain locker, all in one. So yeah, very busy space, but I'm making it work, I think. So here we have, this is where one will stand to shower, and I got this plastic grating, largely because I hate making wooden gratings so much. And then underneath here, I fiberglassed a pan. So all the water that goes through here gets collected in that pan, and then there will be a pump for pumping it out. And then two 20-gallon fuel tanks. They are Monel, and they are strapped down with these ratchet straps. That the hardware of the ratchet strap is stainless. I feel really good about that. They're very secure. Making the saddles for them to sit in was kind of interesting because the saddles needed to bolt onto the frames, which are perpendicular to the keel. The tanks are not. The tanks also need to be more or less level, which the frames are canted 5 degrees aft. So I had to do this and that, which was interesting, but I did it and it fits really good. So, so we have supply, return, fills, vents, and then my sort of distribution panel, so to speak, with my primary filter. It's a long enough run from the tanks to the engine itself that I felt it was appropriate to add a auxiliary fuel pump. So I have a little 12-volt fuel pump for at least doing the initial priming. It would seem from running the engine that once the lift pump on the engine is going, and everything is primed, that it doesn't have a problem, which is great. But if it was a problem, I could just have this wired so that whenever the engine is running, this is running also. So yeah, very simple setup in that you have the supply and the return for the forward tank, the supply and the return for the aft tank, and it's just a case of having one of them on at a given time. I didn't feel good about doing anything more complicated than that, honestly. So I didn't. Yeah. And then this is where the anchor chain comes in. So I've just got Schedule 80 pipe, which is going to feed into the locker forward there, sort of over the top of the head, which is going here. So it's busy in here, but that's all right. I've also started building this sort of settee. I'm going to have a bench that folds out from here to add a little bit more seating, and then a little table so that there's somewhere to sit and eat or play cards or whatever. Yeah. Water tanks are going underneath this bunk, as is a water heater. That will be plumbed into the galley. Then batteries and potentially some other electrical stuff is going underneath this bunk, and probably back there as well in the engineering space. And then beginnings of a cabin sole as well, which is a mix of white pine and larch. Just using up all the softwood I've got left. A little bit mix and match, but that's all right. It's a workboat, so. This is all Western red cedar that was that Dane gave me. Thank you, Dane. I assume it was out of a house project at some point. I didn't actually ask. I just said thank you. So, yeah, just using that to panel out this bunk and the galley. I think I have just enough left to finish the galley. This piece, I don't quite know what I'm doing with it yet. I might end up going here, or it might end up going somewhere else. This is mulberry, actually. Really lovely piece of mulberry, which is nice to look at. And also I wanted to incorporate at least one piece of mulberry into the boat, because there is a Japanese superstition that if you incorporate a piece of mulberry into your boat, it will ward off lightning strikes. So, might as well. On the off chance that that works, might as well. This is the beginnings of the galley. Sink is going here. Water pumps and other bits and pieces of plumbing and whatnot are going back in here. For refrigeration, I'm actually just planning to get a 12-volt cooler rather than build something. And I found one that will fit perfectly underneath the sink here. And that does a couple of things. It obviously it makes one less thing to build. It is simple to hook up, simple to maintain, simple to clean. And you can take the whole thing out and take it with you, if you're going somewhere for a bit, which struck me as nice to maybe be able to do. Propane stove is going in this cutout here. And then cabinets. There's going to be some storage back here. This is a slightly difficult space to use because of the overhang.
Can you show me where because you're standing in the build right now,
Mm-hmm.
so you're really, right, that's your plus an inch or two or an inch and a half or something,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'm really happy with the design and construction of the coach roof, and that it allows for even my tallest friends to stand in the galley without hitting their head. So that is a good thing. And then back here we have the drivetrain and some more of the engine systems. So this is not installed yet, but it's on the shaft. This is a dripless seal. So this is the modern version of a packing gland, essentially. I'm a little bit mystified as to how it works, but I'm assured that it does. So, also we have the inlet that we saw from the outside for raw water intake. I added a T to it so that I could do engine tests by hooking up a garden hose, but B, also that will allow me to flush the system very easily, to flush salts out of the raw water loop, because I'll just be able to hook up a hose to it. And sea strainer, and exhaust, and all that good stuff. So, yeah, this is also going to be covered, this whole bit. This is going to be sort of a box, so that there's no risk of stepping on a propeller shaft. Yeah. And then the exhaust goes out there. Testing. Yes, no, maybe. What? Sound? Yes? What? Huh? Hmm. Yes.